is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Good morning to you. 4 minutes after 9 on Monday, September the 10th. And here to take your calls, the person called the eyes and ears of children in the system and the country as a whole. Speaking up for children and young people, I refer to the Children's Commissioner for England, Anne Longfield, who's been in to see me before, so it's good to see you again.
Yeah,
Anne, if I may call you that. Thank you for coming in. Hope you had a pleasant summer.
Very nice, thank you.
All right. There are many things to discuss, not least perhaps a story that's in one of the newspapers this morning. I don't know if you've had sight of this. The Prime Minister being urged to cancel plans to write off £2.5 billion worth of child support payments owed by what are known as deadbeat dads. Now, the Department of Work and Pensions wants to write off the money owed to up to 970,000 single parents from the last 20 years because they say it's not cost effective to chase it. It would appear the Prime Minister might not agree. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I guess the thing with that is you've got the other parent who hasn't had the support for that period of time. So what's going to happen to them? They will still want that to continue, I imagine. But it's a system which has been clunky. It's always reacting after the event. It would be much better, and there has been a move for this over recent years, to try to get parents to sort this out in advance, for it to be much more amicable, to have a deal, if you like, that they both sign up to with the kids. So move away from that adversarial kind of system. But I'm sure there's some in there which, have been on the books for decades, as you say. So it will be a problem. It's just at the end of the day, the kids need the support, and the parents that's got the primary carer responsibility need the support. So it'll be a tough one. I wouldn't want those obviously to miss out.
No, so if it's 20 years, it's still worth chasing, surely, if they're owed that money.
Of course, yeah.
All right, OK. Let's go to calls. First up is Terry in Sydenham. Terry, you're on the radio. Your call to Anne Longfield. Go ahead. Morning to you.
Good morning, Nick. And good morning, Anne.
Hi.
Do you think that the gang warfare that has broken out could be linked to absentee fathers?
Well, I mean, I get asked a lot about the violence and the gang warfare. It's a big issue in lots of areas of the country, but obviously particular in London. I'm on the Serious Violence Task Force that government set up, so we look at this in some detail. And I think there's, it's pretty clear there's a number of things going on here. An unstable family home, whoever's in it. If there aren't positive role models there, male role models, then often kids will feel that that's something they miss out on. Some kids will be excluded from schools and therefore outside that stability. So it's actually the kids who are often the most vulnerable. It's often the ones that are falling out of the system for whatever that reason is, but certainly lack of stability at home and, sometimes chaos in the house, and that feeling for some kids that actually they want to belong somewhere. And sometimes, sadly, the gang offers more of that than home.
Is this a particular problem for the black community?
Well, in certain parts of the country it is. If you go to others, it's not. So, I mean, the factors within all of that.
Tony Sewell, who you probably know, he served on the Youth Justice Board. He's a black man himself. He wrote in a piece in one of the papers last month that he visits, unfortunately, these young men who are in police units, many of them black. He said every boy said their problem started when their fathers left home, while others were haunted by the father they never knew. This is the reality. What we have are black boys thrown together, all from backgrounds without fathers. Well,
there's lots of truth in there. You've got kids who haven't got stability. They haven't got dads there to help guide them. You've got a situation where they are all together. And sometimes that's when they fall out of school, and sometimes that's sadly when they end up in prison. But you've got that density of kids there who've got a lot of problems, and once they're in, you'd hope...
So how do you tackle it?
Well, once they're in prison, you'd hope that actually you were going to help them so they didn't come back. But the fact of the matter is most do come back. So that's the kind of worst case scenario. I think you tackle it early on. You help parents, you support parents, you help the families provide that home environment, and you provide really good stuff for kids to do, which are alternatives, and really good role models, be they around school or youth centres. So
what do you mean a role model? How would that work?
Well, you've got people who are offering alternatives. If you've got a gang scenario, scenario, then you've got strong characters who are, you know, in all sorts of ways applying emotional kind of influences to them. It seems that there's only one way to go. If you've got really good people who are going out, working with these kids, getting to know them, getting their trust, and then saying, look, there are alternative ways. This is how you you could run your life. Then actually, that's much more positive.
How much is this fueled by drill music?
Well, drill music is not pleasant. I've stared at those videos like everyone else and been pretty shocked by them. The kind of glorification of violence is not something that any of us want to see. It's unhelpful, and the Met will say that that's really plays its part in London. But if you throw the net wider, the kids who are involved in gangs aren't always the ones you see on the videos. They're actually the ones that have no confidence, few friends. You know, they are
Should there be more responsibility by drill music videos and indeed the social media that puts them out there?
Yeah, I mean, as with so many areas of social media, I'm just really clear that the platforms need to take responsibility, and anything which glorifies and fuels that kind of violence isn't good. But it doesn't take away from the fact that actually those kids need strong
but should they be
alternatives.
taken down? YouTube and others, should they take drill music videos down when they seem to be violent?
Yeah, anything that's avert violence like that, I don't think has any place on a kind of public platform.
Quick response, Terry, you asked the question from what you heard. Terry?
Yeah, I'd go along with virtually everything you just asked. Those were the questions I wanted to ask. So,
all right, Terry, thank you for that. Let's move on. Good luck, Terry. Thank you. Gus in Hampstead. You're through to Anne. Go ahead, Gus. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Anne.
Hello.
Hi.
Just returning back to the internet, really. One of the challenges that we all face as parents is control of access to the internet. We have controlled substances in our lives all the time. You know, I'm thinking particularly around tobacco and alcohol and drugs. And the government has a stand, has a position on that. It says that, you know, these are the restrictions around access to these activities. And I'm just wondering whether something similar for the internet. I'll give you an example. A lot of those common .com websites have minimum ages, and it seems to me that the minimum age is somewhat laughable. And is it not the possibility that the government can drive forward some form of age verification? You know, if you want access to this material, you have to be of a certain age.
Gus, stay on the line. Let's see what Anne Longfield says. Anne?
So, absolutely is the answer to that.
Absolutely, to what part of it? An age, mandating age?
A lot of the age is already there, but they're not enforced.
No,
so
I can pretend to be whatever age I like on the net.
So social media companies and platforms, in my view, need to take much more responsibility for making sure that there aren't kids on there of a younger age. Now, there's going to be new age verification around access to porn for 18-year-olds. So a lot of the technical stuff that enables that to be possible is being developed. I'm told that can be used for younger age kids as well.
And what happens? Are there fines if a firm is found to transgress?
I'm not aware of the detail of the age verification for older children, but I think there probably should be, and certainly government is coming forward this October with proposals for social media companies and regulation and the like. Now, this is a long, laborious debate. There's been the kind of harsh words, and then there's been pullback. There's been the social media companies saying we will do it, and then they don't do it. So actually, now is the time, and I'm just really clear. These are clever people. They can make incredibly clever things happen on their platforms. They can work out when there's young kids on there. They can use the algorithms, they can spot the words, and they can do more. But actually, within all of that as well, parents need to make sure that their kids know it's not okay to be on those platforms if they're under 13, when they should be on there, because they're not designed for them.
Quick response from what you've heard, Gus.
I agree that the responsibility does lie with the parents as well. But I think the government certainly has an element to play here. I look at the GDPR regulations that took control of my personal data online and controlling its access. Something similar, when GDPR came in, a month later, British Airways has a bunch of accounts hacked, and suddenly they're reporting it immediately. legislation can make a huge difference, you know.
I think we will leave it there. Gus, thank you very much. Just while we're on the subject of social media, before we move on, and you may be aware of the case of Lucy McHugh. She's the 13-year-old girl who was murdered, and the chief suspect is Stephen Nicholson, who's been jailed for 14 months over his refusal to hand over the password to his account. The Met Police now have to what is thought to be quite a lengthy process apply to get the Facebook password so they can get in. He was using Facebook prior to the believed abduction and subsequent murder. What should Facebook and other companies do in cases such as this?
Well, like most people, I just find it absolutely incredible that when there's been such a tragic incident as this, then the companies fall back on their procedures. So hand over the information with and comply with the police, I would say.
Yeah, it could be no other justification. Sure. We move on to other matters. Ish in Ilford. Ish, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Anne.
Hello,
Morning.
sir.
Yeah, my question's really in relation to homeschooling. I mean, we're seeing more and more people that are choosing to homeschool their children as an alternative to mainstream schooling. Just wanted to know what your opinion was on homeschooling.
OK, and you stay on the line, Ish. Just to back that up, the research shows that in about the last 3 years it's risen by some 40% homeschooling. And Longfield.
Even more than that in some areas, actually. It's trebled in some areas. So it's a complicated picture.
Geographical areas or sectors of children? Do you mean?
It's mixed.
Right.
It's mixed.
I wonder why. Yeah, go on.
So the reason I think it is sectors of children, actually it's a profile of children. So we've always had
middle class kids.
Well, we've always had a healthy a healthy section of the population that for philosophical reasons want to home educate, and that has remained the same, and that's absolutely fine. But the real increase has come from kids who often are having problems at school. They maybe have additional needs. The school will often say to the parents, look, we don't think we're able to support your child. It comes after a time where the child's often been bullied or having a really hard time. And they suggest that the parents might want to educate them at home. Now, that's a completely different kettle of fish than those that have always wanted to do that. They're able to do that, they have the support networks and the like. And when I've been kind of pressing on this, because there's very little information, I've been asking people, what do you think the proportion is? People tell me they think probably only about 20% of those kids that are educated at home are the parents who do so for philosophical reasons, and the rest are either excluded from school or between schools or not able to get the support in schools, and a large number of those are kids with special educational needs. Now, I think that comes as a bit of a shock to those parents who suddenly find themselves not, having the kids at home for a month or two, but, this is it.
Yes.
And there isn't much support for them at all. And they might not be parents themselves who have had a brilliant experience in schools. So for those children, it's largely known, as you say, that number's grown fast. And it does feel to be very linked with schools becoming less and less tolerant. And
what do you think of that?
Of those kids?
Yeah,
well,
that's not fair.
I'm really worried about those kids because they, we want schools to be there for all kids.
Yeah, and if you've got a little chap or girl who's educational, it's probably even more important that they're integrated with, for want of a better word, regular children. I don't mean to cause any offence.
So that school has to have the kind of bandwidth and expectation that they offer support for those kids who need a bit of extra help. Now, looking back, I know we can all do rosy-tinted glasses, but looking back, the school I went to did that. There were lots of additional support classes around. It wasn't a fancy school, but that doesn't seem to be here.
Were you top of the class?
At various points.
Yes, I knew you were.
I peaked about 10.
Let's go back to Ish. Ish, are you homeschooling a child or children yourself?
Yes, I am. Well, my wife is, and I'm a supporting father. So we got 3 girls. The eldest is 9, the youngest is 6, and all of them are...
What's the one in the middle? 9?
She's 9. She's 8, sorry, she's 8.
9, 8, 6. And you and principally your wife are schooling all 3?
All 3 of them are being homeschooled, and they're being homeschooled for none other reason because we feel that we can basically teach children better than anyone in school can, because...
And your view is to take them all the way through to what, 16 or 18-ish?
Well, we haven't actually decided that, to be honest with you. Right now it's basically just get them past the 11-plus stage.
Okay. So then maybe go into a school after their exams?
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
But
okay.
what my concern is that the fact that there's hardly any support from the government for homeschoolers, and the homeschoolers are actually saving a lot of money by taking because each head costs thousands of pounds.
Well, let's bring Anne Longfield back in. This is something. Don't go, Ish. But this is something you were saying. Is that there needs to be support for someone. 3 little kiddies that could do with some support.
I just wondered, Ish, did you always plan to do this, or was this something that your kids started school and you just thought it wasn't for you?
No, they never started. I mean, when my wife floated the idea to me of homeschooling, I thought she'd been smoking something funny. I didn't know anything about it. I was so ignorant. But as I started researching and I started realizing, hold on a second, there's a lot of people doing this. There's a huge homeschooling world out there. I started to grow to like the idea, and now I think it's the best decision that we could have made.
Yeah, but support-wise, I mean, there are forums, there are groups in some areas, but obviously that have been some areas and not all areas. And some of those forums, I mean, they won't be the kind of forums that have the breadth that you'd want on everything. So it's quite hidden, I think, and people, I don't think it's not clear who has responsibility for giving that support.
Okay, just lastly, what do you do about sport or games? Do they belong to other teams outside of school hours?
Yes, of course.
They
I mean,
do.
like Anne just mentioned, there's lots of groups out there. So we're part of many Facebook groups.
All right, Ish. Well, good luck with the girls. Thank you. And of course, it is the responsibility of the local authority, isn't it, to make visits at some point to check that these 3 or
it is. But if they've
be.
never been to school in the first place, which is in a way why I was asking, then actually the local authority won't necessarily know.
So they could have fallen through the net.
Yeah. So if they've been in school, they'll know.
There's a trace of them, effectively.
But even then, you can imagine with people being stretched, then what
Good
amount
luck, Ish, and to Mrs. Ish. Z in Hayes. Z, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Good morning. I've got a question about the Fortnite playing. So what do we have to, as a parents, take to stop our kids playing Fortnite?
This is this addictive game, well, almost addictive game, where in some instances young people actually take bottles so they can relieve themselves because they're so absolutely addicted to the game. Anne Longfield.
Yeah, Fortnite. So we went out at the beginning of the summer and asked kids what they were doing for the summer holidays. And you know what I'm going to say next.
Playing Fortnite.
Playing Fortnite. And then you'd have parents who'd say, I'd say, well, look, you've done loads of stuff over the summer. Yeah, but if it was just down to them, they'd be playing Fortnite. So these games are, first of all, they are addictive. And others have said to me, but it's a good game, it's of the better kind and all the rest. But they'll have all sorts of things going on that make kids want to be on it, stay on it. Just like, if any of us watching YouTube, the next one's on in 2 seconds. Now, as adults, we have a bit more experience and breadth to be able to think, actually, after the 3rd time you've watched whatever comes next, maybe you better get up. But if you're a child, you're much more likely to be drawn on. So Fortnite. I don't want kids to be playing this all the time, obviously. I think the more that parents can find the energy in the evenings to, have lots of stuff that includes all the children, then rather than just one kind of drift off and, 2 hours goes by and they're in a bedroom and all the rest. I know people have busy lives. I know it's not easy, but actually distraction, finding alternatives, having kind of house rules, I know that sounds a little bit kind of out of the 50s, but kind of, everyone putting their phone in a box at a certain time, parents included. Because when I say to kids, what about screens? I say, well, look, our parents are doing it all the time. I hear the thing beep and they check their emails. So not having phones in bedrooms, having phones in a box, even on certain days, but starting to try to give a bit of space for life without it.
Do you think the manufacturer should have a responsibility that after, 3 hours, it automatically...
Well, yeah. So building in this kind of design that allows everyone who's using it to have a bit of a break. Yeah. I am firmly in favour of manufacturers taking that responsibility. And you know who does it very well? Actually, Lego do games very well. And they build in children's kind of breaks and needs kind of by design. So after a certain time, they'll have those little reminders. You know, imagine if your kids went online, how long do you want to stay? Well, they might say 8 hours, but you'd hope they'd say half an hour. And then after half an hour, it pops up saying, you've had your half hour.
Right.
Do you want to go do something else now? No, they might say no. So I'm not saying all of these things
Right.
are
How
the
old are your
answer.
children?
Oh, I've 25.
Right. They're past the fortnight stage.
Well, yeah, he's got other things that he plays seemingly incessantly when I'm trying to have a conversation, but nonetheless.
Okay. All right. And what about, but some people who don't understand, perhaps people who don't have children, or the children are perhaps slightly older, and they'll ring me later in this hour and they'll say, why don't you just take the controls away from them? Just tell the child you're not going on Fortnite and take away the headset, or it's really not as easy.
Yeah, but whenever I talk about this, in studios like this, it's the biggest thing that everyone behind the wall nod away at and say, oh, I had to lock a cupboard, put them in a locked cupboard, you know, all those things. Now, of course, those give you immediate relief, but actually they're there tomorrow, the day after, and there's peer pressure and the like.
Yeah.
So I'm keen for parents or for schools to take a greater lead in it themselves in school. I think parents have to see what's going on. You're still a parent, even though your child's doing this. And I think there's a bit where actually parents, we were all kind of in thrall. You know, we wanted the newest phone. We love technology, all of those things. And it's good, but it needs balance.
Z, thank you. Grant in Sandhurst. Grant, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Hi, Nick. How you doing?
Good, thank you. What's your question to Anne Longfield?
Yes, hi, Anne.
Hi.
My question is basically about the voting age. I was just wondering what you thought of it, whether you thought potentially it should be lowered. I mean, my sort of view on it is that I know you can't actually go and fight, but you can join the army at 16, so you're being trained to fight for this country, but you can't actually have a say in what you're fighting for. You can be a parent, you know, you can get married, but you can't vote. I was just wondering what your opinions on that were.
Anne?
Yeah, you're not going to be able to buy Red Bull actually soon. But we won't go there.
Well, I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, it's one of those things that actually I haven't come to a firm conclusion on. I'm not just trying to fudge here. I used to campaign for it in the past. I know Scotland's started on the route, and certainly in the referendum they had votes at 16. They did a lot of work in schools alongside it. They are very supportive of it. I think in principle it's something that probably we should move towards, or certainly look at in more detail, but there needs to be a lot better education in schools. Well, that kids often don't get their education in schools at the moment, or elsewhere. So I think that just goes hand in hand. It's a big step and we need that support there. But in principle, I think we should be looking at it.
Lowering the voting age.
Yeah.
Quick response from you, Grant, as you asked the question.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much...
That's what you wanted to hear? All right, thank you for that. I'm reminded, we talked about homeschooling. I'm reminded by one of the listeners, Rachel in Bexley, who said, what's your view? Stacey Solomon, who's a Loose Woman star, you may have heard of her, but she homeschooled her children. And she said, there were a few comments after I said I was homeschooling the boys about how dumb I am and how dumb they would turn out. I already have an insecurity, which is people saying I am thick because of my accent and my personality. Do you think there are some parents, or some people, not necessarily parents, who do see it perhaps as for children who aren't that bright or whatever other reason, which seems a bit unfair?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, Stacey Solomon's always seemed pretty bright to me, and she's got a really vibrant career and, you know, is going
but
from
is there a
strength to
prejudice,
strength.
do you think? Some parents, some others see it?
I think that for those parents who choose it, there'll be a whole mix of parents. I think that what the big move is for parents that haven't chosen it.
Yes.
And for those parents whose children are struggling. And that's just a completely different ballgame. So that's the area I think we need to look at. But Stacey Solomon, you know...
Yeah, good luck to her. You mentioned Red Bull, Monster Energy, other energy drinks. Possibly now they will have an age restriction.
Take you into that land.
Yes, take you to have an age restriction. Your view on that? A lot of retailers, by the way, won't sell them to children at the moment.
Thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm pleased when retailers take responsibility. I've been pleased when the supermarkets have taken a lead. I'd want others to follow suit on that. It's pretty powerful stuff. I know these cut-off in ages can always be picked to pieces, but actually, you know, up until that age...
What are we saying, 16? Are we?
Actually, it's up to...
You want up to 18?
It's been proposed up to 18. So as you're kind of, as you're reaching maturity, if you like, then clearly you can start to argue different things. But in terms of cut-off points, they're kids before 18, and people understand what that means.
Tina in East London. Go ahead, Tina. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, as a country who prides itself on providing duty of care to children, what is government doing about the dire situation that SEN kids find themselves in with no provision and funding in mainstream schooling?
Sorry, what kids did you say?
SEN.
SEN, special educational needs. Sorry. SEN.
Yeah.
OK, stay on the line, Tina. Anne.
So I've been talking a bit about this with the children who experience problems in school where they've got special needs and the schools are saying they aren't able to meet them. That in no way is the vast majority of children. This will be a few children. There were good plans in place that were brought in a few years ago about special educational needs, around lots of plans that would be bringing people together to support those children. There are real problems about assessment and about the length of time people have to wait and children have to wait, often a year. Now, I always say with politicians, 5 years is a lifetime for a child. Well, if you've got a need now for special educational needs and support and you have to wait a year for the assessment and possibly a year for the treatment after that, it's a bit like mental health support as well. Yeah, those huge waiting times. It's hugely disruptive. It means that children can't get the support they need. It seems to be getting more difficult for some children in some areas. I'd be interested to hear what your experience was.
Let's bring Tina back in. Tina?
No, I'm not talking about the assessment. The assessment in itself is dire. I'm talking about children who are able to go into mainstream school to be told that the provision isn't there. They're not getting the funding from the government and they cannot educate your child.
Well, these are the parents that I was talking about. Some may not choose to educate them at home after that. I say choose slightly in inverted commas because some feel they don't have much choice. But for others, they will be in school and they won't get the kind of one-to-one support and the like. It is a problem. Schools tell me it's lack of funding. We know their budgets are squeezed. It is an area that needs a lot more attention.
Tina, a quick response from you on that.
I think we should hang our heads in shame that there's any child in this day and age who isn't going to get an education because of funding. And it's happening more and more often to kids who are able to go into mainstream school who just need a little extra support. And not every parent can give up work and go and be a homeschool. I'm not
completely.
a specialised teacher, and you guys are absolutely failing in your duty of care to children across the country.
All right, a quick response from you from that charge from Tina, if you would.
Yeah, well, Tina's saying that government's failing, and I'm here to highlight where those failings are. We've got some research going on at the moment that's looking at this in more detail, also looking at speech and language support in schools. Parents have been very clear that they think their children aren't getting enough support, and as Tina rightly says, not all parents will. Well, most parents won't either be able to or wish to be able to provide that support. So there is something here which is a real urgent priority, and it's something that we'll continue to shine the light on.
Lastly, one question from me before I let you go, Anne. You may have seen last week guidelines from the Sentencing Council that said parents who abuse their own children should be given leniency if they also care for that child. Judges consider not sending their parents to prison if they're the sole or primary carer. Your reaction to that, Sentencing Council suggestions?
Well, I don't know the detail of that.
Parents who abuse their own children should be shown leniency if they care for the child as well, because putting the parent in jail obviously is going to disrupt the child's life.
Well, I suppose there's a couple of things. When parents are sent to jail, usually they don't actually take any account of what happens to the kids. I mean, that's a huge generalisation. I'm sure there's people shouting at the radio now, but they don't take enough account of that. If they abuse their child, then I don't want any leniency around that at all. So if you put those two things together, it's an imperfect situation, but I'll go away and look at that.
All right. Good seeing you, Anne. Thank you. Thank you for coming by the studio. Anne Longfield, Children's Commissioner for England, appearing here on LBC. We're News Now with Thomas Watts.
A former minister who resigned over Theresa May's Brexit proposals says he fears for the future of the Conservative Party. Steve Baker's warned at least 80 of the Prime Minister's own MPs are preparing to vote